Okay, Alhamdulillah, okay. We have Dr. Dina with us today, okay, and I would like to thank everyone for being here this morning, okay. It is with great pleasure and honor that I stand here before you today to extend our warm welcome to our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Dina. I hope Dr. Dina later can tell us the full name. I don't dare, in case I mispronounce your name, Dr. Dina. Okay, who is an expert in the field of theology and religious pedagogy. Okay, we are truly privileged to have you with us today to share your insights and wisdom with our academic community. And let me give a quick introduction, okay, on Dr. Dina, who is an associate professor at the Faculty of Islamic Studies of the University of Sarajevo in the Department of Religious Pedagogy and Religious Psychology in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She is the author of 3 books and more than 20 academic articles in the field of pedagogy, theology, and religious pedagogy. She is teaching courses such as general pedagogy, general didactic, methodology of teaching religious instruction, and religious pedagogy. She is also the head of the chair for religious pedagogy and religious psychology at the Faculty of Islamic Studies. Dr. Dina holds 2 bachelor degrees in the field of Islamic theology, which she received in 2004, and another in the field of pedagogy in 2006. She's also having masters and PhD, all from the University of Sarajevo. Okay. As you can see on the screen, the title for our discourse today is Contribution of Islamic Pedagogy and Education through the Affirmation of Values. Okay. And I really encourage each and every one of you to actively participate in this intellectual journey and to pose some thoughtful questions and to embrace the opportunity to learn from her. Let's approach this event with our open hearts and minds, ready to absorb the wisdom that Dr. Dina graciously shares with us. I hope, because she was in a hurry just now, she apologizes because of the grab. You know how the grab works. Sometimes they cancel at last minute, okay? So, are you ready, Dr. Dina? I hope we have given you enough. Thank you.
I think that I don't need microphone. I'm pretty loud. My voice is high. Maybe I don't feel that. We will see. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Once more. I'm really glad to be here. It's my honor and pleasure. And thank you very much for hosting me. I'm glad to see to hear, and many students here and professors. And I should say that I came here also to learn something from you. I expected. Thank you, Professor Nada, for introducing me. And I would like just to know something about students. Are these students from the educational leadership program or okay? Okay, education, master's education. Okay, thank you very much. And then with that, I can start. Professor Nasa opened this session with showing the topic of our conversation today. Contribution of Islamic pedagogy and education to the values, to the promotion or affirmation of the values. It is recognized today that many modern societies are facing with some problems related to the erosion of the values. And when we raise the question, what is the reason? Is it the lack of information so that we have erosion of values today? Is it lack of information today? What are the reasons? It is not actually the lack of information. Informations are accessible to almost every human being in the world. There are many other reasons that cause erosion of the values. Violence, many social problems, wars. You can see that unfortunately in Palestine today. In Bosnia we experience that also. Climate changes, family relationships, permissive education. So many reasons. Those harmful effects of those policies can be seen in the society, educational systems, education, also in personality. Unfortunately, we witness so many violence, more and more violence in the world today. Murders, domestic violence, and so on and so on. Sarajevo, I don't know whether you heard about King Professor Assoc, one of his teachers. He teaches the Masih interpretation of the Quran, and in one essay dedication, he has written that modern society should return sometimes to the ancient teachers of humanity and could see and hear their discussions on the humanity and on the values. You know, Jalaluddin, I'm sure that he is respected. He said once, he made distinction between mind and person who is educated, without moral ethics. And he told that the person who is well educated, intelligent, but without nurturing ethics and morals, his mind or her mind is similar to the thief, glance Candle, light the candle, serve the peace by feeling the mind, full mind, without ethics and morals. Serve that man. So, from time to time, we have to get back to our classical discussions on the human being and on the values. And we have to be educated, of course, and we have to be moral, ethical on the same time. Like a bird which flies with its two wings even, it should be educated, well educated, and it should nurture moral and ethics. We can see so many classifications in structural relations. Not much very interesting in this topic. So it's pretty wide, but I will try to, from different points of view, to cover this. We can find many classifications and definitions of values and value education and so on. But very rarely we can find among those classifications the values related to the transit. Very rarely. That's why I'm showing this course, and I will be showing one more later on. The concept of values education can be found in the literature under various terms such as moral education, character education, ethical education, and so on. There are many benefits of value education, and you are studying it. We will not go deep into the theory, this part of the theory, because you are in the field. Many sources, actually, fundamental sources of Islam nurture values. Most of the Quran deals with the values and moral issues of human life. And the central topic in the Quran is to believe and to do good deeds. There are some terms that are related in Arabic language to the good, verb good, good, and the Quran mentions some of those terms. Khayrun, Sami, Unsari, Asumar, Asalati, Khayrun, and Birru. Just the opposite terms that mark something that's evil, that's bad deeds, are the following. Terms Sharrun, Sun, Abisun, Sayyi'atun, and Fesad. These are just illustrations to see how many values Quran mentions and nurtures: peace, cooperation, freedom, solidarity, responsibility, equality, love, and so on and so on. When it comes to the Islamic pedagogy, of course, we first have to identify some topics related to the pedagogy, education, in the Quran. And we can find so many ideas of things related to the education, upbringing. For example, the description of human nature. How human nature is described in the Quran. How Islam sees human nature. Will you contribute to this? How human nature is true? One of the descriptions of the human nature is that a human being is curious. Curiosity, activity, it should be active also. Curiosity, we recognize that from several discussions. how many people is there? Let me put you a little bit lower, because I cannot see students and professors. Thank you. The curiosity. We could see that, for example, from the dialogue between Musa alayhi salam and Hazrat. You know that story, I'm sure. Musa alayhi salam asks him about some unusual things that Hazrat couldn't understand. And every time he asks, I'm summarizing the dialogue. He replies, you will not be patient. You will not be patient and you will ask him. And Musa alayhi salam promises that he will not ask again. But every time he asks, he breaks his promise. Can we say that? But really, he breaks his promise because of that, because of the curiosity. Ibrahim alayhi salam, then he asks Allah to show him how he revives human creatures. And Allah asks him, don't you believe? And he replies, I believe, but I just want my heart to be calm. And we can see some other examples. For example, Musa alayhi salam again, he wanted to see Allah. He wanted to talk to Allah. And he talked. We find also so many other topics like the methods of teaching, of education, upbringing, educational styles. We can recognize it also. Then Allah says to the Rasul Muhammad alayhi salam, by God's grace, you are merciful to them. If you are harsh and rude, everyone, they would run away from you. It means that we should be very polite, we should use the most beautiful words when we educate someone, when we advise someone. It should be predominant approach in our teaching, in our education. We can find also the idea of active listening. I can see that from the dialogue between Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was ordered to sacrifice his son, what he said? He said, oh my son, I'm ordered to sacrifice you. What do you think about it? You can see, even in that situation, he asks him, what do you think about it? And he replies, you should do whatever it is, whatever you have to do. And so many other topics and values, of course, related to those pedagogical topics in the Quran. We will discuss this topic quickly: characteristics of Islamic pedagogy, education approach, Western versus Western secular approach. What do you think? What is the main difference between Islamic education or pedagogy approach and Western secular approach, pedagogical approach? Could you discuss a little bit about this? This is my understanding. I will show you my understanding of the topic because I studied general pedagogy at the Faculty of Philosophy. We don't have this system. We don't have Islamic University in Sarajevo. Kind of integrated knowledge. We have secular universities, secular faculties, and Islamic faculty, you know. So I studied Islamic theology at the Faculty of Islamic Studies, and I studied general pedagogy at the same time at the Faculty of Philosophy. You know, and I have some insights into them, and maybe I could give you some comparisons. Maybe you will not agree with me, but it's my understanding of this. Oh. differentiate the specific goals of Islamic upbringing and education. There are some differences. Of course, there are many definitions and understandings of the goals of Islamic education. One of the understanding is that to education, we should respect the haq, the right of everyone, and we should realize this tahqiq. But the first haq that must be respected is God's haq. William Chipping also said that education serves the needs of the human soul in its quest to return to God on the best possible way, on the highest quality way. And we should follow the three fundamental principles of Islamic thought: the unity of God, Tawheed, Nubuwwah, and return to God, Al-Ma'ad. And there is a huge difference in this term between secular approach and Islamic approach, pedagogical approach. Because in Western secular approach, everything, ends here. There are no consequences of our deeds in the hereafter when it comes to the secular approach. But we should prepare ourselves for the return to God. Elna, you are much more. About Al-Asr's educational philosophy. It is translated into Bosnian language, and we also have his referate that he gave at the conference in Mecca in 1977, Concept of Islamic Education. We have that literature, and we are reading. We are happy to read those books. And Atas said that the main goal of knowledge of education in Islam is to create or produce a good man versus good citizen. And he explained that the main goal in the Western education, is to produce good citizens. Luckily, when we had some discussions with the faculty, and we invited some philosophers and educators from some European countries, for those who were familiar with Al-Atta's idea, they were critical, and they replied, it's not correct. We also aim at producing good men, In our education, we aim to produce good men, to create a good man through education. But, of course, there is a difference. The difference between good men and good men in the West, or in Islam, in the name of what we should be good, we will be good. In the name of what? In the name of God or of Allah, or in the name of job, or in the name of money, and so on and so on. Zahra Al-Zira, have you heard about this? About the author Zahra Al-Zira? She has written the book, Coolness and Wholeness in Education and Islamic Perspective. I translated this book into Bosnian language. She said the purification of the soul through moral and ethical Quranic teachings, as sharpening the mind through reasoning and thinking about God's creation, the universe, thinking about oneself, are the ultimate goals of Islamic education, teaching, and practice. There are some practical goals of Islamic education, but the main goal is to instill, internalize Islamic values, and to build evaluation criteria in our life based on Islamic values and Islamic morals. The concept of Tawheed is something that differentiates Western secular approach and Islamic pedagogical approach. Most scholars believe that Tawheed belongs to human nature, which is called fitra, and the prophets, messengers came to remind us Tezkira, to remind us and to awaken human nature, to remove the forgetfulness that weakened human understanding of the field. And in our education, in seeking the knowledge, we need educators. Al-Hadi. Who is Al-Hadi? Allah is Al-Hadi. We pray in Surah Fatiha, we pray in Dina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Like the Latin verb Edazzare and Satio, in the same meaning, Dina Sirat al-Mustaqim. God, Allah, is first educator. But during the regular educational system, the educational process, we need also teacher educator who will direct us, who will direct us how to implement Islamic values and how to see approach. According to Sayyid Hussein Nasr, knowledge, Tawheed, is viewed through two truths. First, knowledge comes from God, who is the source and subject of knowledge, and who is the supreme object. And the ethics is inseparable from the process of learning and knowledge. It means that we learn first of all from God. And God, Allah, is all-knowing, Al-Alim. Al-Alim. He is the first Aql, Al-Aql, Al-Awwal. And there is a huge difference here again between secular approach and the Western secular approach and Islamic approach. Because who is the source and what is the source of knowledge in the Western approach? Is it God? The reason is the source of knowledge and not the God. And there is a huge difference. Holistic approach also. I understand wholeness through at least three different dimensions. I have written one article, one book chapter, that was published this year in Germany, under the title, this is the book, is there anyone who can speak German here? Islam Unterricht in this book, Islamic education or discussion about Islamic education. I don't know whether you know, but in Germany there is a process of establishing, of opening several Islamic educational institutes or theological institutes. This process started maybe 15 years ago. I think that they have 5 or 6 theological institutes, and the government supports those. Previously we were educating in Southeast Europe, mostly at the Faculty of Islamic Studies in Sarajevo. We were educating religious teachers, imams, and they mostly were going to Germany, to work as imams, to work as religious educators, or some people from Turkey, mostly were coming to Germany. But now they would like to have it under their view. Wholeness in terms of the development of all human potentials, abilities. Because Islamic pedagogical approach recognizes the combination of cognitive, affective, and spiritual aspects of person being, physical, moral, and other abilities, in order to create high-minded, creative, and well-educated individuals. Insan al-Kamil. Aql, Ruh, and Qalb. I can tell you that some pedagogues who teach general pedagogy, not Islamic pedagogy, in Sarajevo, one of them is my professor who was teaching, who was professor at the Faculty of Philosophy. he was writing the books on general pedagogy field, but he was trying to give the message to pedagogy in general that should deal much more with spirituality and transcendence. He puts critique to pedagogy, to general pedagogy field, because it doesn't deal with the spirituality and holiness and wholeness. But not all of them. Mostly they don't take care about this aspect of human being, the spirituality. Wholeness in terms educational for all human beings. Have you heard about Jan Amos Comenius? Jan Amos Comenius was living in the 16th century, and he is considered as one of the founders of the pedagogy in Western Europe. One of the founders of the academic discipline pedagogy. Because we have discipline, well-developed pedagogy. Within that discipline, we have so many sub-disciplines. Andragogy, family pedagogy, comparative pedagogy, pedagogy or educate, pedagogy for how to work with talented kids, with kids with special needs, methodology of teaching, methodology of education and upbringing, so many sub-disciplines, well developed. And Comenius is considered to be one of the founders of the pedagogy in the 16th century. When he, at that time, in his book, Great Didactic, wrote Omnes omnia docenture, when he wrote it, it means everyone has the right to be educated. When he wrote that, at that time, in the 16th century, it was kind of revolution in Europe. It means that everyone has the right to be educated. Child, children, women, men, people from lower social status and higher social status. But until that time, mostly men were at the faculties or were educated. Men, not women, men and people from higher social class. So it was kind of revolutionary at that time. And we can find, of course, those principles in the Assoc. We are proud of this fact. Very proud of this fact. And I'll give you also one insight into this when I'm speaking about Comenius. He was living in the 16th century, and of course you know that some classical books that dealt with the topics on education, on upbringing, were translated into Latin language and later on into many languages. One of the books that was translated was the book Terralimul Muteralim Fi Tariki Teralum, written by Zarnuji at the beginning of the 13th century. And I analyzed that book. I was identifying some pedagogical ideas and didactical principles in that book. Because Johann Friedrich Herbert, again, he is also considered as one of the founders of the pedagogy, Comenius and Herbert, and he is famous for the fact that he has invented those and identified those educational principles, didactical principles. He's very famous for that. And when I was analyzing that book, Zarnuji's book, I found all the principles there. Of course, not systematic, not structured on that way, but they could be found, they could be identified through examples. And I have written an article about this. And for me, it was interesting to see that this book was translated into Latin language Pedagogia, something like that, ad comparantus methodus. It's translated into Latin language. And I was counting the years, at that time when the book was translated, Comenius had around 40 years. He was still alive. He was in his 40s. Of course, we cannot claim here that he was reading that book, but most probably those people who are considered to be founders of the pedagogy, they had an idea about these books. Most probably they were. And fullness in terms of lifelong learning. Classical Islamic educational system was open to everyone, was supported by scholarships, by WAC, and for me it was interesting to read some essays written by Sayyid Nasr, and he stated, for example, that even traders from the Charshi al-Bazaar could enter lectures and attend lectures in madrasas at that time. It was open for everyone. They could attend lectures even though they were not formally involved into the madrasa education process. And holiness. It is also one of very important characteristics of Islamic education approach. Holiness. We consider that reading, students, I'm talking to you, reading, studying, researching, and so on, is considered as an act of piety, ibadah, religious act, ibadah. And I ask my students, are you always aware, conscious, when you start to read, to study and so on, are you aware that you are doing ibadah? Are you always aware of that? But be honest, please, when answered to me. And they say, we are not always aware of this. I was watching one documentary that was developed in England, and there was a discussion about this. And the question raised, even it was raised even previously, why Muslims during the golden age period of Islam developed the science that much extensively in all areas, and we stopped somewhere to develop science. What are the reasons? There are many reasons. There are many interpretations of those reasons. But we could say that there are external and internal reasons. External reason could be colonization, and that colonization imported secular educational system, missionary schools, and so on, and we find divisions between educational system, Islamic educational system, and secular educational system. But there are some internal reasons. One of the interpretation is that when Muslims understood that reading, learning, studying, and so on is an act of ibadah, they were developing the science. When they stopped to understand that the reading and studying is ibadah, they stopped to develop science. It is one of interpretations. Sayyid Nasr says in his book, Sacred and Knowledge. Sacred and Knowledge. It's a very good book. I could recommend you. He said that the modern science, he of course puts critique on the modern science, and he says the modern science stopped to take care about the holiness. It's a huge problem. It causes huge problems. It doesn't care about the holiness in education, in science. Of course, we at the same time stand in a multiple relationship and we should nurture many values in relationship to God, to himself or herself, to individual people, to other people, to human communities, and to the nature. Among the main differences between Islamic and Western morality are the emphasis on timeless religious principles, the rule of the law in enforcing morality, the rejection of moral autonomy as a goal of moral education, and the stress on reward in the hereafter as a motivator of moral behavior. Those are also main differences. Affirmation of universal values through religious Islamic pedagogy and education. What are the possibilities, rules, and so on. Maybe you are not in the position to give arguments about this, but in our context, we are in position to always give arguments on the values of religious education. I will give you just short insight into this. We have a long tradition of Islamic education in Bosnia and Herzegovina, starting in the mid of the 15th century. It started with the Ottoman presence in the Balkans, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and so on. But we went through very turbulent times. Many different cultural and civilizational frameworks. After the Ottomans, Bosnia and Herzegovina was conquered by Austro-Hungarian Empire. Catholic Western, cultural civilization framework. We had to adjust to that. And after that, we had Orthodox Eastern government. We had to adjust education and so on. After the Second World War, communist regime came, and we had so many troubles during that time. I'll give you just one example. During the Ottoman time, we had around 100 madrasas, Islamic school in Bosnia and Herzegovina, schools in Bosnia and Herzegovina. During the communist time, all madrasas, of course, the number during the time decreased. And during the communist time, all madrasas were closed by force, with the exception of one madrasa in Sarajevo. Only one madrasa was working. And it has been continuously working since its establishment. It is the oldest school in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Oldest school, more than 500 years old. But when it comes to the religious education in public schools, even religious education in public schools had a considerable place during the Austro-Hungarian time and during the other, times until the time of communist regime. But during the communist regime, the religious education was expelled, from the public schools, from the public education system. It didn't exist anymore. And I have insights into pedagogical textbooks from that time. You cannot find religious education as one of the basic educational area that should be developed in human beings. We find 5 educational areas. It is moral education, intellectual education, aesthetic education, work education, and physical education. That's it. It means there is no religious education. If it is not in the textbooks, it means no theoretical chance to educate in that field. Did you understand this? It was expelled from the textbooks, university textbooks. It was expelled from the public educational system, even in mektebs. You have mektebs, most probably. Do you have mektebs? Do you use that term? Those schools attached to the mosque. Mekteb. Yes, we have those schools, the oldest schools, attached to the mosques. Those are non-formal formal. This is non-formal basic Islamic education. To teach religious rituals, basic Islamic values, and so on. Even religious education in mosques was closely controlled. At the time when I'm the last generation from the communist. I was trying at that time. I was attending, I think, fourth grade or third grade, fourth grade, the last generation. There was, and I could tell you, we are we are not Muslim country, but more than 50% are Muslims. We have Christians, Catholic, Orthodox, and some other minorities, and so on. But mostly teachers at that time were not Muslims during the communist time. Teachers were not. Most of them were Christians or atheists. And my teacher was, I don't know what she was, but she was not Muslim. Okay, it would be okay if she didn't provoke us, if she didn't put pressure on us. When I was going to Mecca during the weekend, my parents were sending me to Mecca, to the mosque during the weekend. If she heard about that, someone would say, oh teacher, Dina went to the mosque during the weekend. She would give me grade 1. In Bosnia, it means it is unsatisfactory, class. She would give me grade 1 for math or for language, whatever. I would get 1. Means I'm not passing, unsatisfactory. And so many other issues related to this. She was on geographical map. There is a place called Pope's Field in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Pope's Field. And she would ask us to find on the geographical map Pope's Field. When we found, we say, oh teacher, we found Pope's Field on the geographical map. And she would say, now find Imam's Field. Imam's, Hoja, we say Hoja. Imam's Field. We were looking for the whole year, like kids, On the geographical map, we were looking Imam's Field. We say, teacher, we cannot find it. And she said, yes, you will find it. Find it. We were stupid, We couldn't find it, and we felt stupid because we cannot find it. At course, it didn't exist on the geographical. So it's just a part of experience that we had at that time. So when I say affirmation of universal value through religious pedagogy and education, we pay attention to this now because we were able to establish pedagogy at our faculty during the war. After communist time, it was of course Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia was separated in the 1990s. Bosnia declared independence, and after that war started, war of aggression and genocide. I'm sure you have heard about genocide in Sarajevo. At that time, I was 14 years old when the war started. At that time, during the war, you can see our ambition, war. And we wanted to establish, again, re-establish religious education in public educational system during the wartime. And first of all, we had to establish a religious pedagogy academic field in order to educate religious teachers who will be teaching in public educational system. Did you understand this? First of all, we had to establish academic field to be recognized as academic field. And again and again, we had to prove that this is war, that the religious education in public educational system is war, that it should have a good status and so on. So I am arguing about this. My professor that I mentioned helped us a lot. He came to our faculty from the Faculty of Philosophy to teach, as a guest professor, and he helped us to establish, at the time I was not in the faculty, but he helped the faculty to establish this academic field and to introduce some pedagogical courses, not general pedagogical courses. In our context, we have to have in our curriculum not only Islamic pedagogy, we have to have general pedagogy, general didactics, psychology, general psychology, and methodology of teaching. Those general subjects. In order to get certificate to be teacher in the school, we have to have this in the curriculum. And he helped us. He has written many articles, and we find some good ideas about this written by our Professor Dina. He's still alive. We can see that he has founded this book, Pedagogy of Man, from a human being to human being learning to learn society. And we promoted this book several days ago at the he says universal valid values, truth, beauty, justice, kindness, and holiness. You can see holiness as a value. He recognizes holiness as a value and put arguments for this. He says that holiness encompasses all the values, and those values should be the main coordinates for education in general. Those values, universal values, which are spiritual mirror of man, should be base for pedagogical norms and pedagogical goals, educational goals. Educational goals and pedagogical norms should be based on these universal values and should be based also on holiness. He argues this. If any of these components are missing in the learning and teaching process, the entire personality suffers, and this leads to the anthropological reductionism, but also leads to the value disorientation. Religious education promotes universal valid values. And we have the problem when the universal valid values are relativized. What does that mean, to relativize universal valid values? How to say, to decrease the value. Relativization means decrease. That value is not value anymore. It's a problem when we have relativization of the values. What is the difference between, you can see, this kind of alienation, dehumanization should be prevented by authentic upbringing. What is the difference between authentic upbringing and education versus instrumental? He argues, educational principles and goals should be based on the universal valid values and on authentic education and upbringing, and not only on instrumental. The difference between authentic and instrumental are huge. Authentic upbringing and education would be found in religion, in family upbringing, in the arts, morals, and so on and so on. And instrumental education is established by educational authorities, government. It's instrumental. It depends what educational authorities think about the values. What are the values that they praise? And in different countries, different societies, and different cultures, we can find different values that are appreciated in the educational system. I was watching one documentary again related to the educational system in Canada. And I was also surprised when I heard this. Some interviews were done with parents. And they said, some of them said, there are some days in the schools, Canadian schools, when we are invited as parents to come and bring our, food, food, traditional food from Malaysia, from Bosnia, from India, China, and so on and so on. We come and we bring food. It's a beautiful, company. We share our food. It is well accepted. But when we come with our values, based on our religions, traditions, cultures, then it is not accepted as the food was accepted. And one of them said, there are some ways and events when we get invitation letter as parents, we get invitation letter to prepare our kids to, to clothe some special clothing. For example, it is not recommended, it is ordered that female should wear male clothes and male is wearing female clothes. And we should send our kids in that clothing to the school. Because the schools, the educational system promotes homosexuality as something that it's a value, it's normal. It's normal. It is instrumental. It is establishment. Political establishment, educational authorities establishment, and so on. They promote those values. Did you understand the difference now? Okay. I don't know if I have time and will mention one example. This is my experience. I was participating in one summer school. It was in 2008 in England at the Birmingham University on religion and public life. We visited so many places, temples, Sikh temples, mosques, non-governmental organizations, and so on. And we had some lectures. There was a professor I can clearly remember. He was from Japan. And he was arguing that homosexuality is something very normal, it's part of the nature. He put critiques on religion because the religion forbids that and so on. He was telling also about the punishment from the Islamic perspective, and I reacted on that. I asked him, Professor, please answer me. I asked him, who set up the moral codex? Who is that? He told me it's a very hard question. Who says that? Another question was, maybe this question that I raised is not that much nice. As an example, I had to do that just to prove something. I asked him, what would you say in a case if a father, for example, and his daughter, they would like to do incest. They would like to have incest. What would you say? Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Is that moral? Is that okay? He told me, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's moral, it's not good. Okay, I agree with you. I thought, yes, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. But how could you take one value that is prescribed and present in the religion? You take this value and it's a value, and another value is not a value anymore. You can't do that. And he told me, he was confused. He told me, yes, I know what are you talking about. You're talking about the relativization of the values, universal values. Yes, you're doing that now. All the values that are present in the religion, in the Quran, are considered as universal valid values. That's, I think that we should be prepared to those modern problems, challenges. I think in general we are not prepared. I'm not prepared also to go in the media and to discuss. We have to be prepared. We have to have good methodology in developing the arguments. Professor said, if there is nothing sacred, then all is permissible. Upbringing and education must be grounded in the culture, but not only in the culture. If education and upbringing is based only on the culture, what then? There is a tendency towards ethnocentrism. If it is based only on the culture, and Islam doesn't promote this. All mankind, we created you from a man, from a human soul, you say, from a human soul. And give you into nations and tribes to get to know each other. Education should be based on culture, but also on religion, because in that case, it would promote universal values. Are there some tendencies today in the world to have one ethnicity in the country, in the state? Is there a tendency somewhere to have one ethnicity, one ethos in the country? We see that right now, and we see what happens in Palestine now. You see that on the may God help people. May Allah help them. And all innocent people. Religious education supports human nature and related values. I covered it somehow. I will not. Now we have some subtopic that is related to effective pedagogy, didactic approach in the affirmation of values. I will try to show you how we somehow develop didactical approaches in teaching Islamic religious education, and I will show you some examples from different levels of education, preschool until the higher Islamic education. First of all, effective pedagogy in the affirmation of values in the Islamic religious education should take care of critical thinking, creativity, and curiosity. You know that sometimes Islam is accused that Islam is a religion that indoctrinates people. What is indoctrination? Force, manipulation over someone's mind, reasoning, understanding. But we could clearly see from the Quran encourages us to develop higher thinking processes, creative and higher thinking processes. Quran mentioned those terms such as tefekkur, thinking, understanding, tefekkur, tadabbur, nazar, tabassul, tadakkur, i'tibar, tabassum, ta'akkul, and so on. In the terms of reasoning, understanding, reflecting, contemplate, and so on and so on. Many Quranic verses end with those phrases. Quran sometimes intellect in Islamic perspective is consisted of the mind, reason, and heart. It cannot be separated. Reason and mind is intellect. And Quran uses sometimes intellect, reason for understanding, and sometimes uses heart for understanding. أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب heart and التدبر يتدبرون القرآن. Now, Razi professor, famous Professor Razi, he identified 30 synonyms associated with the term ilm. Term ilm in the Quran is mentioned so many times. It is the second word after the word Allah that is intensity. Yeah. Those are authors from Malaysia, I think. Yes. They have written a book, Creative Thinking and Islamic Perspective. Yeah, I was reading that book. And you know that they analyzed 15 styles of creative thinking in the Quran. Creative, critical, emotional, reflective. It's very interesting. And so on. You're familiar with this taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is applied, I think, in most part of the world, in most educational system. I saw that in the United States. I see that in Europe and so on. And we are speaking about classifications of educational goals in 3 different domains: cognitive domain, affective domain, psychomotorical domain, and so on. But what I would like to show here, this is my understanding. Knowledge, understanding, analysis, synthesis, and critical evaluation are classifications. And I think this is not a novelty. You know, from general pedagogical view, this is a novelty. This is the basement. But we see this clearly from the Quran and from the Hadith. For example, I'm sure you are familiar with this Hadith. It is reported that Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, learned 10 Quranic verses, ayats, from the Prophet, from the Rasul, and they learned by heart. They should understand them and apply. After that, you can see the same classification: learn by heart, understand, and apply. After that, they would learn the next 10 Quranic verses and so on and so on. The same classification. Of course, there are some other examples that prove that. Muhammad alayhi salam sent Muaz in general Yemen. He asked him, how are you going to judge? I'm going to judge according to the Quran. If you don't find it in the Quran, how are you going to judge? I'm going to judge according to the Sunnah. If you don't find it, how are you going to judge? According to my critical reasoning, my understanding. So this is not a novelty. Of course, I'm showing this to my students. There are some active verbs that help us when we define educational goals, intended learning outcomes, and so on. It helps, really. But we should know that this is not a novelty. Through Islamic religious education, we should internalize the knowledge. The knowledge of mind should be transformed into the knowledge of heart. In that case, it is internalized knowledge. It is part of us. It is available. We should also transform educational content into educational goods. This is a specific term, educational goods. What is educational goods? Which is the content and how is the content which is educational? Of course, we have contents from many academic fields: medicine content, psychology, pedagogy, social work, Islamic sciences, and so on. It is an education, but content. But how to transfer that content to be educational good or goods? It is the content, educational good, transforms us in a positive way. It makes distinction. It brings embedded value, deep embedded value. It is something that changes us. It touches us. That content touches us. If my lecture doesn't touch you, it means it's not an educational goal, it's just content. Just content. We should transform that content into educational goals. But there are ways how to do that. We should combine, we should put in touch cognitive and affective and spiritual domain together. Understanding should be also experiencing, interests. We should connect with emotions and so on and so on. Dominating educational approach should be approach to support positive transformation. In your schools here in Malaysia, Islamic schools for kids, do educators, teachers punish them? No. No punishment. That's good. Was it previously the case? Yeah. It was the case also in Bosnia 100 years ago. They were Muslims, scholars, ulama, but in mektabs and madrasas, pupils were punished, physically punished. Of course, we cannot find that in the Quran and Sunnah. The approach is not supported, encouraged, not at all. But we could find that in the history. We should nurture this approach, improving guidance and encouragement. Of course, we should have prevention. We should have some kind of disciplining, sanctioning, but not physical sanctioning.
We of punishing because we believe that we not apply punishment. So, but that was not for Dina, even worse. And I remember that some of these Spanish scholars said that there are some students, there are some child that they learn easy, and there are some child that they learn by doing. Yes, because in reality, they used to apply that, and it works. But in our content, because we are both dependent on idea of not using corporal punishment, so it makes the issue more complicated. And we have many issues. There's no such problem practice.
Oh, that's good. We had some problems, and of course, it's at that time very discouraged to look at them. They were very afraid of imams, of morals. And we cannot be authorities if someone is afraid of us. We know how Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam dealt with kids, with people, on the best way. And even when he was disciplining them, he was doing that gently, This should be the predominant approach. And I could see that through Allah's beautiful names, 99 beautiful Allah's names, most of the names are names of forgiveness and mercy. And this was reflected in the approach, educational, pedagogical approach of the Rasulullah. Didactic approach. We should think about the art of teaching and learning. I'll show you here some examples. Of course, these are some active learning methods, strategies that we could use in Islamic religious education. We could adapt them to our content. We could easily adapt them to the content that we teach. I'm sure that you use some of these methods. We could speak about those traditional methods, oral methods, textual, and so on. But some of these methods are also very stimulating for the instruction, for the teaching and learning. For example, this in pairs, in larger groups, use of tutorial groups, quizzes, writing reflections on learning. Sometimes when I give lecture, I say my students in the middle of my lecture, please now write reflection, or at the end of the lecture. In case when they know that sometimes they will be writing reflections on the lecture, the attention is much more, is better. Their attention is much better. Students' presentations, role play, students producing mind maps, or we are creating mind maps. You know about this strategy or method? Mind maps? Okay. Group discussion, team, and so on and so on. We have also project-based learning, classroom workshops, group project work, seminars. You apply seminars here, and how it goes, how it works. How it is organized, seminar here.
Normally, our seminars are professional seminars.
Yeah.
Only at the postgraduate master of PhD level. That is where you have PhD conduct the seminar, especially the class where you got people and you judge with that. The rest of the seminar are professional seminar where we say professionals will be taught. But the method of teaching is not that spread.
Yes, I understand. It is all very similar in Bosnia. Seminar is predominant approach method in the United States. I was attending some courses, and they were applying seminar as a method. And also in Germany, they have those big lectures and after that seminar. But this is very important, good method. I'm trying to implement it with my students, third and fourth year, undergraduate, of course, master and doctoral course. But I'm trying to do that. Sometimes it's hard for students to get that habit. But it goes, and they get used to growth. When I was in the United States, I saw and experienced that students should be prepared first of all. We cannot get the seminar unprepared. We should be well prepared. They learn, they read approximately 400 pages for each week. But for one course, 300 to 400 pages for one course, from one week to another week. And when I say that to my students, because students today they are counting the number of the pages that they should read. I say that don't count the number of the pages. We didn't do that previously. Now you are counting. So I say that students in the United States read 300 pages per week for one course. And they say me, you ask too much, Professor. Too much. Believe me, there are also other models of the seminar. In some classes, I saw and we were working on projects, mini projects, small projects. From one week to week, one project should be completed. A lot of reading, a lot of research. They work a lot at the university. They really work a lot. And I try to motivate my students to read a lot, learn. There are also some other methods, teaching with cases, group presentation, comparison metrics, association method, oral method, acting, demonstration, humor as a strategy also is very important. We should have, to some extent, humor. To some extent. I'm showing you some examples that I developed at my faculty with my students. There is a master thesis that was developed at the faculty. I was mentoring this thesis, applying one of those methods, project-based Learning as a creative model of teaching in Islamic religious education. And this student, she's a teacher, a religious teacher in a public school. And we were doing this during the pandemic time. She developed several projects in the master thesis, and she applied it in the school. And we collect all these data, all those results. And the first project was done in the first grade. You can see 3 teaching units we combined. Faith teaching teaches me nature is a gift from God, Creator Allah. Here are some activities, working steps. Development of the teaching units, reading an electronic class picture book, storytelling, photographing, making and publishing a picture book, a good city. Those small kids produce this, together with the teacher. And group discussion. It's the whole process. We see some photos. They implemented this in the public school. There is another project. It's good to share knowledge, and there are teaching units that we again combine. Idris alayhi salam writes with a pen. Nuh alayhi salam builds a ship. Components of Salah, differences among people as a sign of God's grace. 4th grade project. Again, application of some learning active methods, stories in a jar, compiling and editing a picture book, and so on. Project discussion. And 9th grade project. 9th grade project, it's good to be good to others. Look at this. They made, in one part of the project, they made Prophet's box as a didactic material. You can see it's very creative, very nice. They were writing some hadiths, some messages, conclusions from the hadiths and so on. Related to the topic, of course. The topic was, it's good to be good to others. Method of identifying similarities and differences. These are just examples to see how we could create our tasks for students, for pupils, in a stimulating way that nurture higher thinking processes, the differences between Muslim prayer and Christian prayer, to find similarities and differences. Again, this method I found in one of the books written by Robert Bazan, maybe Professor Hussein knows about this author, Robert Mazzano. He has written many books about the methodology of teaching. This book, I think, is Effective Teaching Strategies. And I adopted this method to the topic on religious holidays. You can see some religious holidays about Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, Christmas Catholic, Christmas Orthodox, Easter Catholic Orthodox, Shabbat, Pesach, Hanukkah. You can put here Deepavali. I saw it 2 days ago that there was a celebration. Of course, there are many religious holidays, and you choose some holidays that are, relevant for you here in this context. And we compare and try to find similarities and differences between some of these characteristics. Holiday time. What are the differences in terms of the holiday time? Similarities and differences. Duration of the holiday. What is celebrating? What is celebrating in Deepavali, for example? In Orthodox, Easter or Christmas or Eid al-Adha and so on and so on. Fasting, prayer, customs, tradition, food. You can see that this comparison matrix is very complex. Much more complex than the Venn diagram that I showed previously. But we can make it easier also if we want to adapt it in another way. But this is very good. If we are now in a position to fill in this table, this matrix, it would be hard for us. Do you agree? It would be hard, very hard at this moment. Because even though we know some things we lost, some information, we have to repeat that maybe we would be able to fill in this space. But this cannot be done in the primary school. It can be done in high school or at the university. Look at this example. Of course, when we teach Islamic education and whatever we teach, we should take care of affective domain, of the moral domain, of the values. So here is an example for the theme or Surah Al-Ma'un, the consequences of my deeds. It is the topic in the curricula for primary school. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, primary school. It is one of the teaching units. Surah Al-Ma'un, the consequences of my deeds. And we prepare this task for kids, I think 5th grade. We prepared hammer, paper, heart shape. One heart is white, one heart is black. And we also prepared those stick notes, black and white. And we asked, after the introduction of the surah, the interpretation, and so on, some conclusions, in one part of the class, we stick notes to write down the good characteristics of believers, the good deeds and characteristics on the white. And we asked another group to write down the bad characteristics of people who deny the day of judgment on the black note sticks. So when they prepare to come to the table, in front of the table, so they were putting the white sticks on the black card, white, and the black sticks on the white card. Why? What do you think? Students, what do you think? Why? Please tell something. The black, bad deeds, bad characteristics on the white one, and the good deeds, characteristics on the black. Yeah, yes, super, excellent. Yes, if we do bad deeds, our heart becomes black because of the sins. But if we are not believers, or some people are not believers, they deny the day of judgment. If they start to believe and to start to do good deeds, their hearts can become white. Because there is a hope. We take the position in pedagogy of optimistic. We say that, we call that pedagogical optimism. We should leave a hope, should have a hope that in some human beings, or in all human beings, a positive transformation could happen. That they could change in a better way. And Allah accepts our repentance until the end of life. There is a hope that people could change. Yeah. So this was the message, It was emotional for kids. stories as a teaching method. There is a nice picture book, Hartul Hayavanat. It was published in Bosnia during the war, supported by, I think, Qatar Charitable Society. And very nice illustrations and very nice stories. There are many, but we have to choose the good ones. Sometimes we find very aggressive illustrations. We don't use them. Visual methods, we use media, movies, cartoons, pictures, and so on. Here is an example of the minding map. I could suggest that we could use these minding maps as a strategy when we prepare our lectures, because they are very structured. They could be, if we do that way, well structured and very systematic. For example, the life of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could be presented in this way. We could take 3 different periods of his life and make those structures in that way. This is the photo from one textbook, German textbook on Islamic education, and they have good illustrations specifically designed for the textbooks. Not already made, photos, but all these illustrations are specifically designed. And also what I do like in those textbooks are the questions, the tasks for students, very stimulating. We don't have time. I can speak some German. I read. I was learning German, and I like their approach when it comes to the formulations of the task for students. This is a very interesting example, a story about a religious teacher Mualim in Mektab in Bosnia. Very creative and very emotional. There is a Mualim who teaches kids in the mosque, and he got an idea to do something very interesting. He took those fluorescent colors, put them into water, and asked kids to take wudu with this water. Of course, the color of the water was not changed. It was normal water. They took wudu, and after that, he brought them in dark classroom. And those parts of the body were shining. Kids were very emotional, very happy to see that, and he told them, Inshallah, for those who take wudu and who pray, they will be shining at the day of judgment. So, very interesting, very creative example how we could, nurture emotion, values in kids when teaching some obligations, religious rituals, and so on. Acting method in teaching religious education, we will show on the topic who deals with the sick friend. This is the teaching unity for the 3rd grade of primary school students in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sarajevo. Look at this. There is a story. I didn't translate it because we don't have time. Ismail and Ilma are the main actors, female and male. And look at my student. We are doing practicum, like you. I'm preparing my students. I'm observing their teaching preparations. I'm suggesting, of course, to use some methods, and everything is carefully observed. After that, when it's approved, they go to the school and teach. They work with mentors also in the school. And this is the photo from the practicum in the public school. My student, sometimes students, you don't need to have, some extra financial support things to be creative. She took only 2 plastic globes. One is Ilma, one is Ismail, and the whole scenario was, behind the box. You can see the kids were standing up. They stood up to see what's going on. They were so interested. see what's going on, to hear the dialogue between Ilma and Ismail. We have also Islamic religious education in state kindergartens, but not in all state kindergartens. There was a huge discussion in 2008 when we tried to introduce Islamic religious education in kindergartens. Some political parties were opposed to that, and religious education in Sarajevo public kindergarten. It doesn't exist in other. This is a pilot project, and it goes well. Until now, it goes well. Islamic community in Bosnia and Herzegovina started to establish its own kindergartens, but we have problems. What do you think? What's really the problem? The problem is the state put some requirements that we cannot meet that criteria in terms of the teachers. So we educate religious teachers, but they cannot work in those kindergartens, even though Islamic community found them. If we want to be financially supported as Islamic community, we have to meet the criteria that the Ministry of Education proposes. So we have to decide to be supported financially or not. Role play as a teaching method in religious education. Show that in one class we prepared this role play method as a teaching method in realizing the topic. One student plays a role and plays a role of fear out. But not the student, the teacher plays that better. It's very important that we those rules find the best way. And one student plays a role of Musa alayhi salam, another one plays a role of Harun alayhi salam. Some of them play role, and they are magicians who submitted to God, after they realize that the God is one, and so on and so on. So it's a whole scenario. We should prepare that on the good way, on the best way, and kids enjoy. They learn those facts. They feel that. So we can, of course, implement this method in many topics that teaching Islamic education. I will show you now one example that's not good, non-stimulating. Task prepared by a religious teacher. This religious teacher, he graduated from one of the Islamic universities in the Islamic world. I will not mention which university he graduated from, because it would not be nice to say it here. But of course, I cannot judge about the content that he learned there. Most probably he learned good content, quality content. But they didn't have didactics and methodology of teaching, and he didn't know how to transfer that content to the pupils in high school. We had a problem. We have some students, I don't know whether you have some students who are going, for example, to Saudi Arabia, to Egypt, and some other countries to pursue higher education there and to get back. Do you have some students going there and getting back? From Malaysia, some students are going to some Islamic countries to pursue higher Islamic education and they get back. You have. We also have some students. Yeah, Dina, Sarajevo. Okay, I'm not telling anything about the content, what they have learned there. But when it comes to the pedagogy, didactics, methodology of teaching, I know that they don't master that here. we realized that, and we had problems when they would like to teach in the school, in the state school, and they don't have those skills. Previously, we recognized their diplomas. They should have their diplomas recognized at our Faculty of Islamic Studies in Sarajevo. When they get back, for example, from Medina, from Al-Azhar, they should get their diplomas recognized in Sarajevo at our faculty. Previously, we were recognizing those diplomas, just they bring diplomas, they are recognized. But when we realized that we have this problem, we put some preconditions, requirements. So now they have to take those courses and they have to pass exam in order to get the diploma recognized. So I am in the committee in the Ministry of Education when those candidates are trying to get the teacher certificate. And I was watching this situation. I was in the committee at that time. He prepared the task for high school students in the medical school in a way that was, how to say, as he was preparing himself for the primary school pupils, second or first grade. And it was high school. You can see that huge difference. He didn't know anything about developmental psychology. He didn't have an idea. And he prepared the tasks for primary school pupils, first or second grade. And he was in a high school. Look at these tasks. He gave some introduction, and he predicted that this task lasts for 20 minutes. They were supposed to work in groups, and this should last 20 minutes. He told them that they will get one hadith or Quranic verse written on the paper, and they will have 20 minutes to solve it. You can see there is hadith. I'm showing just one example. Reported that 3 people will not enter paradise. The one who is disobedient to his parents, the woman who imitates men, and I think this is a man who is not moral, who is very unethical. And the questions to answer were: what does this hadith tell about this? What are 3 types of people who will not enter paradise? Which of these 3 types is most important to us? Students in high school did this task in 5 minutes or 3 minutes. The rest of the time they were laughing because they didn't know what to do, what they were supposed to do, just to repeat. They had ayah or hadith in front of them, and they just needed to extract and to repeat. That's it. So all the time students were laughing. It was a chaotic situation. So he couldn't pass, of course. That is it. Now, the end topic is the role and opportunities of higher Islamic education for the affirmation of values. As an Islamic education, what we can do? We implemented some projects on the values at our faculty. I don't know whether you heard about this cooperation within Barzinji program. You heard of? I was participating in that, cooperating with Professor from Shenandoah University, and still I am cooperating. And we had cooperation of several faculties: Sarajevo University, Shenandoah University, your university, Bridgewater College. So I, with my students and with Professor Catherine and her PhD students, in the first year we developed this project, intercultural and interreligious values in college education programs in the United States and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We were developing this project for the full year. semesters. And another year we also developed another project, and recently I was participating in the conference at Shenandoah University on the COIL projects and so on. It was in October. I hope after our meetings that we will be able to make some further connections and maybe to try something similar between Sarajevo University and IIUM. Some people are from here. Atia, Dula, Civic, Ama, also Hamza, Mok, and Mira Katri. And Mira, my friend, Kati. Her name Mira. Do you know Mira? I met her at the conference, and I'm looking forward. I'm so happy to see her today. Maybe she's with me. I don't know. Also, these two pedagogical approaches are very interesting to be and could be applied in higher educational Islamic institutions. Universities, some professors, they're coming from the United States and they're explaining us this reflective structured dialogue in classroom, and also one-fold approach. The provost, vice provost from Shenandoah and the dean visited us in June, and they're explaining this approach. This approach is very useful, could be very useful for us. We choose some social problems to research, and we do it through different academic disciplines. For example, students from medical faculty, from Islamic faculty, from faculty of law, they work in groups and they are developing some projects together with mentors. At the end of semester or at the end of the year, they present their project at a huge event in a town hall, and also they invite some consultants or experts from the community to advise students on those projects. It would be very interesting. I think for you it's much easier than for us in Sarajevo, but we will start to implement small projects at our faculty. That some of us work together with our students and to develop some projects. Maybe we could widen that at the university. Research and publication of academic work on values. Of course, this is our task, academic task, to publish. Your professor Hussein was editing recently one book in which I contributed, and thanks to him. Recently, I have published in this year Contribution of Islamic Religious Education to Intercultural Values in Pluralistic European Cultures, Insights from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I wanted to show to Western academic community and of course to other academic communities that we teach for Islamic disciplines an inclusive way. We promote so many intercultural and interreligious values without our curricula in higher education and also in the curriculum schools. You can see I analyzed our curricula and many subject courses that promote intercultural and interreligious values, also within teaching materials, references. We also have so many projects related to intercultural and interreligious values, seminars, workshops, meeting of young theologians. Those theologians are Islamic theologians, Catholic theologians, Orthodox theologians, students, young students who meet, come together and discuss some issues. There are some topics we don't have time to go through all of them. But we also have one joint master study program, and we implement this study program, interreligious studies and peace building, in cooperation with Catholic Theological Faculty, Orthodox Theological Faculty. Two theological faculties implement this joint master program. Of course, when I analyze intercultural and interreligious values in the curriculum of confessional religious education that is taught in public schools, I found many values. And you can just see some of them through the topics: teaching units, value of common life, diversity, understanding multiculturalism, and so on and so on. We also did research, my colleague and I, on the influence of school dormitories, religious and secular schools, on values and value orientations. Of course, there are many conclusions, but this was interesting because we did research with Muslim students in high school, madrasas, gymnasiums, and Orthodox and Catholic students in their dormitories in schools. And we came to the conclusion that students who attend secular schools, for example, gymnasiums, they tend much more to hedonistic value, orientation value, and those students who attend religious schools, they tend much more, to this conventional or self-realization value system. This master thesis is also very interesting. We developed this as a faculty, and I was mentoring on the elementary school students. Master thesis, he was the director of one of the Sarajevo schools, and he used this moment to implement some values in the public school. You can see the result was the school project is it's school to be human and to love country. You can see he was implemented with his teachers and pupils 800 activities within 800 days in the school, promoting 800, each day or, another value. So they, for example, did some projects on the topic: it's cool to be human, it's cool to be good, it's cool to love your country. They visited national kitchen, and served poor people. They visited the service center for children and families with developmental disabilities. They also organized a humanitarian bazaar, which was held at the school, and they collected some money to help migrants on the streets. At that time, we had many migrants from Afghanistan, Iraq, Morocco, and so on. So they organized that bazaar. You can see how we could connect master thesis and doctoral thesis, of course, related to the values, promotion and affirmation of values, and we can connect them somehow with the schools and projects in the schools. These are some time for that to show. I will show you just Islamic studies in a secular university. For us, it is important to have kind of impact on the secular university, state university. I got the chance 10 years ago to teach at the university level those modules for academic staff from all faculties. They come from medical faculty, law faculty, economics, psychology, and so on. And we have those those lectures 3 times per year. So it's kind of lifelong learning project related to pedagogy and didactics, because they have to develop pedagogical and didactical skills. And I teach those 2 modules at the university: didactics of higher education and curriculum design in higher education. So I have insights into their syllabi, curricula, and what we identified that when it comes to the learning goals and learning objectives and so on, learning outcomes, planning learning outcomes, very rarely we found goals and learning plan, learning outcomes related to the moral domain. They promote cognitive domain. So we advise them to include this ethical domain in the content, in the topics, in the intended learning outcomes, and so on. Also, we have to have the rule in the media. I suggested to have some more educational programs and for children and young people and parents in the media. But when I had that media experience and said that in the media directly, they cut, you know, they cut because it was a critique. Students also, we could do our practicum in the media. Do you have maybe that practice? To send students to do practicum in the media. It would be very useful. Students have huge potential and we as a mentors could prepare them to be present in the media to cover some topics and so on. Thank you very much for your attention, for your time. If you have some questions, comments, please. I will give a lecture on the structure of Islamic education in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the Kuliya of Islamic Religious Knowledge. Yesterday, I did the same topic, this topic at the ISTA, and today's lecture in the afternoon will be on different topics, on the structure and concept of Islamic education in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Dr. Dina. Yes, you have shown us many good examples, especially those related to experiential learning, which is very important nowadays to connect what in order to promote and affirm the values in our teaching. So, can we have questions from anyone here? So my question, how is moral education implemented in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Okay, thank you very much. I showed some examples. We didn't have time to go in detail. How it is moral education applying Islam through its curriculum. We find many topics. We find literature, references that promote, moral education, ethics, but within different topics, within different courses, within different projects, we implement moral education on that way. Of course, we have some courses that are directly connected to that issue. For example, we have the course Islamic ethics at our faculty. But we try to promote moral education, intercultural values, and some other courses, not only through Islamic ethics. Did you understand that?
Do you have specific topics, subject named moral education, like what we have here in Malaysia? For non-Muslims. And for the Muslims, we assume everyone will learn about adab in our Islamic studies subject. We have specific subjects.
Do you mean in the curricula at higher level or in the school?
Primary and in school.
Yeah, we have. You call that moral education, and we call that confessional Islamic religious education. We have that, and it is in the primary and secondary or high school, public state schools. Yes, and Islamic teachers teach those courses in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have also Orthodox religious education. Catholic in the public schools, and also have Islamic confessional Islamic religious education in public schools for primary school students and high school.
Any questions? Assalamualaikum, Doctor. My name is Romaina, and I want to ask: have you heard of using philosophical inquiry approach in teaching moral of the education? Can you share your opinions?
Excuse me, could you repeat? Have you heard of?
Have you heard of using philosophical inquiry teaching for approach in teaching moral value education?
The reference, she is giving me the reference, but I don't understand the name that she is mentioning. Dialogical method. Okay, dialogical method. Yeah, it's very important to use not only discussion method, but also dialogical method. There are various forms of dialogical methods and discussion.
Or any comments?
Alright, my question is very simple. What is your perception in Shariati's idealism in against the Western ideology among religions nowadays? Because yeah, we have like very positive elements in Western knowledge, but in Shariati's idealism is totally against it. What is your perception?
Could you please help me just summarize the question? Maybe I didn't understand.
Okay, in Al-Shariati's idealism, where in Iran, where teenagers there are very keen to Western ideologies, very liberal, I would say. And Al-Shariati's was trying to actually against it and value ourselves, our culture, and in Iran, of course, but it can be implemented in Asia as well, in Asian countries, because we are giving towards Western ideology. Yes, we are so much influenced by Western ideology and whatnot. But what is your perception? Whether should we go against it or we can actually adapt? Thank you so much.
Maybe I understood now. You will correct me if I didn't understand. I understand the world of this way. Stigma is lost daily. Wherever we find it, we take, and we take whatever we find is useful, good, positive in the West, we keep them, adopt. I'm open to every kind of knowledge, and I try to combine them to adopt context. I went to the United States several times. We can put some critiques, of course, there, and we can take some good. I have critiques on my country, my culture sometimes. But whatever we find is good, we should find it as implement, which is useful, those methods. But of course, some philosophies, those relativizations of moral values cannot accept it. Of course. And I told you, I am also learning journal language because I'm reading the books. I would like to have interest into that science. And what do they develop? If a new trend in education, in the science when it comes to pedagogy, I'm very interested to do, to implement whatever I find new. That's
Thank you very much for your insightful talk today. I just want to share, perhaps as an expert in the field of pedagogy, you could help me. Okay, I was one of my classes yesterday, and I was delivering on Islamic and Western philosophy of education and learning. So, from the definition or from the philosophy of Western learning, they believe that learning should act. learners with the act, and learners usually in turn of their learning and their education, their schooling. Whereas it is opposite when it comes to the Eastern way of learning, our own way of learning. We are the labeled as a passive learner, where we always be passive, not talking to God, not engaging, no questioning, no sharing. So, and perhaps it has something to do with one of what the religious mentioned in this book, talim for the talim. Because I understood that why, sometimes the majority of you are very passive. Because, of course, it gives the reason that we want to respect our teachers. That's why we are not being combative, we are not being confrontational. So that's one of the reasons that I get it. Because yes, the movie says that when you see your teacher, you have to stand up and respect your teacher because your teacher is equivalent to the prophet. So this is kind of the reason we are giving in our way, and that remains or that means that the practice they are not able to engage with people. So can we say that as a Western people being asked to be intelligent better than our own, or does it have something to do with the religion which I doubted, or something has to do with culture, which also I believe in that, as an expert, do you have any, you can say, share some knowledge or share some light on this issue?
I understand what are you talking about. I think, of course, Dr. was also open for discussion. There are many cases in which we see that he was open and he was, very, I would say, sensitive, accepting ideas. Sometimes when it comes to this human side, he was wrong. And he, of course, this is a principle. And so unrespect to him if they corrected him in these daily things, I would say. But I don't see the interaction as a way of being unappreciated towards the teacher. We could still appreciate the teacher as an authority, even though we are active, we are participants. And the last thing, there are many scientific research results that show that we learn much more better in a active position than in a passive position through active. There are scientific results. And we can see, even from our experience, those results. When students are in an active position, prepared for the discussion, for the presentations, they are in active position and they learn much more for a longer time in their mind. I don't know whether you are satisfied.
So the answer a reminder for both methods. Okay.
Dr. Dina, I'm Putri. I'm teaching counseling. Okay. When you mentioned just now at public kindergarten, whereby teaching Islamic education is not allowed, right? Okay. So when I think about Islamic education, I think it's all about good values. Okay, all good what values is already about Islamic values. Okay, so I think maybe when it is restricted that the name of the subject cannot be appeared in the curriculum, right? Okay. When you mentioned about the public kindergarten, okay, whereby the teaching of Islamic education is not allowed at all.
Not in all schools, not in all kindergartens, only in one. Only
Okay.
in one Sarajevo public kindergarten in the capital of the Sarajevo.
Okay.
It exists there,
Okay.
but not in other cities.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand that, and I think maybe it is not a big problem, right? In order to still teach the students about Islamic values, okay, because all the good one values already related to the Islamic teaching. Right.
Yeah, of course, there are of course ways, but with their teachers in kindergartens, not only Muslims, we have Catholics, we have Orthodox, and they pass their values, universal values, on the kids in the kindergartens. That's why for us it's important to have religious education, Islamic religious education in kindergartens. But if we get that option, of course, and Christians should have that.
Right. If I can share about the formations of this university, okay, in the beginning, the courses offered are not Islamic religion knowledge. Okay, it has not started with Islamic religion knowledge, but it has started with economic and also law courses. Okay, so the idea is that it is not to show that there is separation between the Islamic studies and also other disciplines. So that is why the idea of formations of this university initially started with those professional courses. Okay, so it is all about the integration. Okay, and I also learned from our notable professor previously, Professor Roslani, and we have her daughter together with her today. Okay, something related to the education, the tourism in education, right? Because when there are specifics on the religious subjects and also other subjects, then it created the dualism. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking, right? So we teach, so meaning that for whatever subjects, even mathematics, science, it's all related to the Islamic teachings already.
That's great, that's great. But you have a chance here, our project is but of course we have to instill the values, Islamic values, wherever we can. There are many Muslim teachers who female teachers. But as I said, the Islamic community is trying to establish its own. But we have problems when it comes to the requirements for teachers. We cannot employ our teachers, religious teachers. The requirement from the Ministry of Education is to accept the teachers that graduated from the pedagogical faculty, general pedagogical faculty, not Islamic faculty. Because they have so many courses related to preschool education, and we don't have that much. Is it your department connected with psychology?
Yes, educational psychology.
Educational psychology. Okay. Okay, please. We will stay in contact, I hope, with you and other professors. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dina, for answering the questions and for your presentations. Actually, for those who can, we can have a dialogue with her afterwards, over lunch, inshallah. Okay? And because I have to end, because our students, they have class at 11:30. While the one is to be there. Okay, thank you so much everyone for being here. But before we end this event, can I have maybe Dr. Putri give our token of appreciation?
Yes, thank you very much. And hope to see some of you in Bosnia, at least some of you. But mostly you have female students, I realize that. Teachers, future teachers.
Yeah, they are our future teachers. So, Dr. Aisha, to give our token of appreciation, Dr. Dina.
Thank you very much.
So much for being here. Hopefully we will have more collaboration with University of Sarajevo in the future, inshallah. Thank you to my students and to all of you for being here. I hope to have another session with in the future, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.